Let us talk about AEW Dynamite from January the 8th, 2024. We got news and notes, one being Chris Charlton, the New Japan Pro Wrestling commentator that has been suspended for his comments about Tony Khan and AEW while on air. And then the second, which we're going to start with this, the Malachi Black news. So Fightful and a bunch of other dirt sheets are talking about Malachi Black, quote unquote, finishing up with AEW. This is like the fourth or fifth time that they've done this. All right. It's getting almost like Charlie Brown with the football at this point. I'm not believing nothing until it is literally done. I don't know how many fake stories they've had about Malachi Black in his 4 years in AEW. But enough's enough. Even if it's true, enough's enough. He's under contract. He's stuck in a 360 contract until he says he's not. Or until he literally shows up on Raw, SmackDown, or NXT. I'm going to believe he's under contract. So, I'm not falling for the okie doke again. Lucy can hold that football all she wants. I'm not running to kick it. Because it won't be long before he has to do some kind of live stream and say he ain't going nowhere, or Tony Khan's going to get scared and back out of whatever deal they're trying to come up with. Will it be great if he was leaving? Sure. But at this point in time, I'm not banking on it. Not going to go into it. This has happened too many times. So we're going to move on to Chris Charlton, which is something I actually do have a lot of thoughts about, as it's very interesting. So, according to Dave Meltzer in Wrestling Observer newsletter, Chris Charlton, who is a New Japan Pro Wrestling commentator and historian, he wrote a great book on the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling called Lion's Pride. He doesn't get enough credit for that addition to the wrestling canon. I actually read most of that book. I read it on an ebook format. I was trying to get a physical copy of it, but I think it's independently published or something like that, and it's absolutely absurd pricing. But if you like New Japan Pro Wrestling, he wrote a pretty good book on it. Anyway, Meltzer says that Chris Charlton is on indefinite hiatus from New Japan Pro Wrestling commentary due to his anti-AEW comments during the Wrestle Dynasty show. So, what did he say? He says Charlton referred to Khan as a, quote, money mark during Kenny Omega and Gabe Kidd's co-main event match. Among other comments, he also questioned what Okada, Jay White, Will Ospreay have done since signing with AEW, and unfavorably compared the Continental Classic to the G1 tournament. Well, it's a ripoff of the G1 tournament. Why wouldn't he compare the two? Now, a lot of people ran online saying, protect Chris Charlton. He didn't mean it. He was working heel, And then Meltzer at one point even said that Charlton wasn't the heel commentator. They would never disparage New Japan this way. It's all about respect and all of this. Kenny Omega, in addition, said that his best friend, who they have notified as Kota Ibushi, was not allowed backstage during Wrestle Dynasty. Famously, Kota Ibushi mentioned that New Japan was ran by the Yakuza or something like that to get out of his contract. So I'm not surprised at all. Anyway, Meltzer says that Chris Charlton wasn't a heel, so he's not the heel commentator, and they would never disparage New Japan. Look, the storyline that they set up, to my understanding, was AEW versus New Japan. That's why Gabriel Kidd came out wearing the New Japan trunks with the lion's face on it and everything. The point is, it was supposed to be about the pride of New Japan. The comments that Chris Charlton was making was in relevance to that storyline of New Japan versus AEW, of the kayfabe combats between the two leagues. In fact, they played into all of this with Gabriel Kidd's comments about AEW, which have consisted mostly of profanity. You know, the old FAEW, who cares about AEW? I mean, it's been a running gag with New Japan guys. You know, people saying that Tanahashi needs to just go into Tony Khan's office and bend over. Just a bunch of really ridiculous stuff that guys have been saying. Guys on the New Japan roster over the course of the year of 2024 have been saying about the working relationship between the two promotions. To take this out on Chris Charlton seems incredibly petty, because none of the wrestlers who were trash talking AEW got punished for anything that they said. So why should he? And then you could easily fold anything that he said into the rivalry and the story between the two groups that you're telling on the New Japan show. So to me, it's absolutely embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. There's a lot of people who are laughing at this guy, who think that what happened to him is justified. To those people, I think that you're just an AEW homer. Just look at this thing objectively. Objectively, he didn't say anything that Tony Khan hasn't heard on a website. You know, he's on Twitter all the time. People call him a money mark. They've been calling him a money mark for 4 or 5 years. Who cares? That has to be water off of a duck's back at this point. He dissed the Continental Classic. He dissed the booking of Ospreay, Okada, and others. So what? None of this stuff was personal. The stuff that Effie was saying about Tony Khan was personal. Right? This stuff is not personal. Now, maybe he did say something personal and I just didn't hear it. Or there's nobody willing to link that something personal was said. But as far as I know right now, none of this stuff is personal. You just don't like that this guy was disparaging your bullshit tournament and your booking of Okada, you know, which is barely booking him, and you're booking a Will Ospreay and guys like that. Too bad. You know, you have to be able to, if you're going to be in some rivalry, company rivalry, you got to be able to take some hits. If you're not going to be able to take any hits, then you need to not do these, it's going to be AEW versus New Japan and all this kind of stuff. Then just don't do it. If you're going to get sensitive and melt into a pile of dust every time somebody says something negative about you, you just don't need to do it. Meltzer, of course, is being very defensive of his boy TK. Says that Chris Charlton was showing bad judgment and that you can't be using those podcaster grifter terms. It's terrible judgment. Unreal. Podcaster grifter terms. They can't even intellectually defend what the issues are here. You just said that the guy is using podcaster grifter terms. This is pathetic. Then things get even worse as Tony Schiavone decides to weigh in. Tony Schiavone, again, I think he's a guy in his 60s, right? He tweets out, tweet, delete, hey, at Reason JP, which is Chris Charlton's Twitter handle. Speaking for all of us in AEW, GFY, which means go fuck yourself. And speaking for all of us who have been around you, take a shower once in a while. Calling him musty stank ass, which is a personal shot. And apparently, Schiavone was sent on assignment so that he would not be on Dynamite or Collision. I don't remember if he was on Dynamite or not. To be quite honest, I wasn't paying attention. I think he probably was on Dynamite anyway. But the idea that he was going to get some kind of similar punishment for his personal attack on Chris Charlton and deleted the tweet. So what is this working relationship that I'm thinking of here? It doesn't seem like there's much of one. If you say anything, like Tony Khan literally went on Impact and just destroyed the company week after week after week, trash talking them, mocking them and their wrestlers. And that went on perfectly fine. There was no complaints. I don't think TNA complained. I didn't hear any of the talent complain until much later. But now a guy says, your Continental Classic sucks. You're a money mark. I don't like the way you book Okada and Will Ospreay. And all of a sudden you're weeping? Anyway, let's move on to one more story before we get into Dynamite. Apparently, Rush and Dralistico have been removed from AEW TV due to backstage heat that the two of them had since November, which is why we haven't seen them. It says Fightful Select has been provided an update on their whereabouts, and it has to do with legitimate heat in the company. On an episode of Rampage taped November the 13th, Rush and Dralistico defeated Richard Holliday and Alec Price in a squash match. In an unaired moment, Holliday was being tended to by doctors, but Dralistico proceeded to stomp him whilst he was on the ground, causing the AEW doctor to get angry. This incident led to a change in plans, as Dralistico and Rush were supposed to wrestle for the tag team titles, and that spot ended up going to the Acclaimed. So Dralistico, who is the brother of Rush and Dragon Lee, apparently is a dickhead. Richard Holliday is a cancer survivor, for God's sake. So, there is no price on being a fucking idiot, right? Like, there is just, it's priceless. Being an idiot is priceless. So Rob Viper, who is also a Lucha Libre journalist, he tweeted extensively about this Dralistico and Rush thing. And he says, nobody who's been a follower of mine on this app should be any bit surprised by the latest Munoz drama. All the old tweet threads are still up. There's no point rehashing things. A zebra doesn't change its stripes. Spoiled 37-year-olds cannot be taught actions have consequences. By all accounts, Tony likes Rush, so he'll keep coming back until the day Tony stops liking Rush. No different than the Rush office boy Greg relationship, except hopefully Tony got the Iggy on how that ended. I think that's had some ROH drama. Dralistico is a whole nother story. His younger brother became a success in Japan, so he spent a lot of time there learning how to be a pro. He matured. Meanwhile, middle brother was busy back in Mexico crashing motorcycles and having his babysitter carry him out of bars nightly. Dralistico has had multiple issues in AEW, which is incredible for a guy who went 9+ months away without anyone even noticing. There's no reason he should have been come back in the first place. No reason he should be back this time, except again, Tony likes Rush. The day Tony stops liking Rush, the name Dralistico will never be spoken of in American pro wrestling circles outside of Mucha Lucha Atlanta. He'll be back to being Mexico's problem. Which is hilarious, right? So he says WWE has loaded up on Hispanic faces. Rush ain't getting any younger. There are at minimum 2 people in WWE who are well connected to the decision makers and don't want Rush around. One for political reasons. The other has spent time with him outside the ring and knows his dark side. So Rush and Dralistico are dickheads, and apparently not very well liked by lots of people, and generally unprofessional guys. So there's that. I don't see the point of keeping those guys around, if we're being honest. It's not like they're making you any money. Again, I said a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple of days ago, sometimes I forget how long ago I talked. But Tony Khan needs to make some hard choices. This should be an easy choice. If these guys are dickheads and they don't draw you any money in Ring of Honor, they don't draw you any money in AEW, they're not really integral in your expansion into Mexico, because you can actually expand it to Mexico without them, then why do you keep these guys around who causing all these trouble? What is the point? This should be an easy decision. Just get rid of them. I don't know. Jalisco is a guy I'm not that familiar with anyway. I saw, Rush. Watched him in Ring of Honor. And he's notoriously rough with guys. And that's kind of been the history with Rush, is that he just kind of beats guys up. And he chews guys up in the ring. I know noticeably he did that recently to Jack Perry, I think like a year or so ago, when he just beat the shit out of Jack Perry in the ring. And he did the job, but he beat the hell out of him. And he's like a no-job guy. He would try to avoid doing jobs as much as possible. That's just kind of his reputation, Kind of a bully, kind of a dickhead. You don't need him, Nor do you need his brother. These guys just are not top guys. You don't need these people. Make it easy on yourself, But that's common sense. All right, let's move on to the show, because I know you guys want to talk about the show. Let's get into the show finally. Match the first. Will Ospreay defeats Buddy Matthews. The match was okay. Will Ospreay, I don't get it. I'm going to ask a question. I want you to try to figure it out for me. What is it that Will Ospreay can do that Buddy Matthews can't do? I mean, you see Will Ospreay do all these, flying over the top rope. You see Will Ospreay do springboard anything. I'm pretty sure Buddy Matthews can do every move physically that Will Ospreay can do. He doesn't, but he could. And that becomes a question when people start, again, telling me how great Will Ospreay is. What can he do that Ricochet can't do? That Pac can't do? That so many of these other guys on the roster can't do physically? I mean, you have a bunch of these guys doing the same thing. I find it hard to be that impressed by Will Ospreay. They did a typical Will Ospreay match where there's a bunch of jumps and flips and there's a lot of strike exchanges and 50-50 back and forth. Ospreay got a reverse GTS, which is the first time I've ever seen that. And then he took a stomp, still kicked out at 2, ended up winning the match with the hidden blade. And then after the match, things got really weird. Will Ospreay got on the microphone, called him Buddy Murphy at first, and then quickly corrected himself. And then said that he's wrestled Buddy Matthews, he's wrestled Brody King. Both of these guys don't need a leader. Says that you guys can be world champions, you guys can be singles champions here in AEW. If you need somebody, I'm your buddy guy, or I'm your guy buddy, or something like that. And then they shook hands. All of this is extremely cringe. Will Ospreay is 5 years younger than Buddy Matthews. He just little brothered this guy. Buddy Matthews is 36, right? I had to look that up because I was like, wait a minute, why is he talking to him like Buddy Matthews is some NXT talent or something, like some guy just having his first match in AEW, like he's Action Andretti or something, like he's some real young guy. Like Buddy Matthews has been around for a while now. What's going on here? Why is he little brother in this guy? Now, of course, this is what triggered all the Malachi Black rumors, because they were like, why is he talking about they don't need a leader, they need to leave? But what is Buddy Matthews going to do if Malachi Black decides to leave? Let's just humor that idea. What is he going to do? You have 40 people on the roster who can all do physically the same thing Buddy Matthews can do. They don't let him talk. He's jacked to the gills. But then, there's a couple of other guys that are jacked and very athletic too, and they don't get pushed. So, again, he's another one of these guys that... What are you going to do? Like, what is his gimmick if Malachi Black leaves? What does he do? I don't know. Like, whatever. But this is incredibly gross, with the handshake after saying, you got all this talent. You don't need a leader. I mean, that part was very nice and all, but you talking to him like he's a young man. A young guy. Guy's been around for a while. Anyway, so we didn't get treated with Private Party. This is the first time Private Party's been on TV in forever. This is the first time they've been on TV in forever. They want to celebrate being the first tag team champions to defend the titles on Max. So they're going to have a toast. And let me tell you this. There was a young lady in their entourage, white woman, side of the head shaved. She looked like an absolute beast. Right? I would not let her in my section. She can't get the bottle service. She should have got kicked out. All right, she should have got kicked out. She had to be an extra or something like that. He didn't get to choose because I certainly would not have had that thing in there. It just jumped out at me. Anyway, MVP crashed the party. Said they want a party too. They're not all business. So they wanted to toast the Private Party for being the tag team champions. And then MVP tossed it to Lashley to have another toast. And Lashley toasted to the Hurt Business taking those tag team titles. And Bob is, I love me some Bob Lashley. That's my guy. But he did not do a good job of delivering the one line he had to deliver. He only had to deliver one line. All he had to do was say, and a toast to the Hurt Business taking those tag team championships. But his voice was so light, and he seemed to lack in confidence in even saying that one sentence. They have successfully, I will say this, they have successfully dimmed the light of the Hurt Business. Remember, they used to be super over. But weeks of no Lashley doing anything and Shelton Benjamin doing jobs has killed that, right? That Continental Classic run, which everybody's so impressed. Oh, Shelton showed his ass in that tournament, man. He was so good. He lost pretty much like every other match, right? That killed him. It killed him. And so now they barely get any reaction at all when they come out there. Lashley wrestled Mark Briscoe. Mark Briscoe hit the Froggy Bow, which is actually one of his finishers. And Lashley kicked out at one. And then Lashley beat him with the Hurt Lock. It wasn't long. Very impressive. After the match, the Hurt Business decided they was going to beat up Mark Briscoe. And then Private Party ran down to the ring and saved him. But they had chairs with them. So, Private Party, not the real tag team champions at all. It was all a gimmick to move the belts off the Young Bucks so they can go on hiatus. The Private Party is it's so sad. These guys they have been on this roster since 2019, I believe. And they finally get the belts, and they don't even get presented as top guys. They get presented as jabronis who fell over backwards into the tag team titles. And you know what? It's been this way for 2 or 3 years. Ever since the Lucha Brothers won it. Anytime an over tag team win it and they're not in the elite, they get kicked over to Rampage or Collision or whatever. And it's like out of sight, out of mind. This happened to the Acclaimed too. Not that long ago. I think last year at some point in time. The Acclaimed were the tag team champions, but it was out of sight, out of mind. They were basically on Collision forever. And then all of a sudden they lost them. I think the same thing happened to Ricky Starks and Big Bill. They were on Collision the entire time. Out of sight, out of mind. So there has not been a good tag team title run in years in AEW. And remember, the tag division was one of the things that they really wanted to focus on, because at the time everybody was like, WWE doesn't care about tag team wrestling. Vince hates tag teams, so we're going to focus on tag team action. But what that really meant is that it was a platform for the Young Bucks. It wasn't a platform to elevate any other tag team. It was about elevating the Young Bucks. Everybody wanted the Young Bucks to take their quote-unquote rightful place as the greatest tag team in the business. And any tag team that kind of competed with that had to be destroyed. That's why they ended up destroying FTR. Even though they gave the FTR the belts for a little while, it didn't really benefit FTR at all. Those belts were made to elevate the Young Bucks. That's it. Nobody else has been booked appropriately. So Private Party being the champions means nothing to anyone. It probably means something to them because it's a great achievement. They worked very hard for it. But it would have been nice to get the push. Would have been nice to get the exposure. Would have been nice to not be the two guys that are going to get eaten by Shelton Benjamin and Lashley. Would have been nice to not be the guys who are just carrying the pipe on this leg of the race. Because now Lashley and Shelton Benjamin are a real tag team and have real momentum, or they will and shortly, and are going to just crush these guys and take the belts. And you know what? It's absolutely the right decision to make. Because the Private Party, I mean, they're not... Is anybody going to cry any tears if Private Party gets crushed? No, because they've been champions for a while now. At least a month. And again, they haven't wrestled on Dynamite. They haven't had any storylines on Dynamite. They're not doing anything. So who cares if the Hurt Business kills them? As a matter of fact, it doesn't even really do the Hurt Business any good to beat them. Because they're cold. And those belts are cold. But what can you do? Alright, they had this lengthy ass casino gauntlet. I was actually paying attention in this match. Okay? There was about 10 or 11 entrants. Jay White, Hangman Page, Wheeler Yuta, Ricochet, Adam Cole, Daniel Garcia, Powerhouse Hobbs, who ended up winning, Roderick Strong, Lance Archer, Kyle O'Reilly, who ended up getting pinned, and Jeff Jarrett. Now, I paid attention to this match when Ricochet came out, and they did the nice little pump fake where Swerve's music started, and then the Ricochet says, I think he said it's a Swerve bitch or something like that, and then his thing played, and he walked out really slow, and he was still wearing the same robe he was wearing a couple of weeks ago. And then I was like, oh yeah, Ricochet. Let's see what you got. First fucking thing he does is a springboard clothesline. And then he does a dive outside the ring. And as I'm shaking my head, he does a springboard moonsault. Oh, like, this nigga just don't get it. Like, he was a crazy scissors wielding maniac last week. Now he's back to being Rey Mysterio again. Bro, pick a lane. I said it and I meant it. You can't do this. You're not doing the crazy axe murderer scissors thing, and then you're going to do the high flying, let's pop the crowd with a standing 630 or whatever. You got to pick a lane, man. If your character is going to be vicious and violent, you need to modify your style. He's not going to do it. He doesn't get it. He's retarded. We're going to move on. Because I stopped paying attention. As soon as he sprung off those ropes, I was like, this nigga just don't get it. He don't get it. He brick-brained. Alright? He just don't understand. And apparently, nobody else does either, because we didn't sit him down and say, okay, if you're going to try to make this work, you have to change how you wrestle. For starters, if he wasn't going to win this match, he should not have been in it. Instead, he should have come out and told everybody why he stabbed Swerve Strickland in the head with the scissors, and said if he comes back, he gonna stab his bitch ass again. You don't put a guy who just had a crazy heel segment where he was covered in blood last week, and you put him in a position where he's one of 11. He's in there with Wheeler Yuta, for God's sake. It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. You should be building his heat so that he can be strong when Swerve comes back. So he should be out there dogging Swerve. You know? Who cares? Anyway, Powerhouse Hobbs pinned Kyle O'Reilly. I had long stopped paying attention. I'm going to assume he won with his finisher and not like a crucifix or a Magistral Cradle or something, right? So Powerhouse Hobbs, who I've been a big fan of for 4 years, who lost it to Konosuke Takeshita about a week ago at the pay-per-view, is now going to get a world title match. He couldn't win the international belt, but now he's going to fight for the world title against Jon Moxley next week. I'm going to do what I've seen other people do. I'm going to be biased. I'm such a fan of Powerhouse Hobbs, and I want that guy to succeed. I'm not going to say anything negative about him. I'm just going to say the booking makes no sense. All right? We know he's not going to win. The booking makes no sense. And then, to make matters even worse, they decide to have Edge, come out there and talk about Moxley as if the match with Hobbs is not even happening. This is my least favorite thing about wrestling. Well, not my least favorite. There's a lot of things I don't like about wrestling, but this is one of them. This is a continuity error, right? At least let the audience believe that Hobbs has a chance to win. Moxley hasn't really involved himself with Hobbs yet. But Edge is out there talking to Moxley like he's the number one contender, like he's the guy. You know, he's wearing it, for starters, let's pause, put that to the side. He's wearing a shirt, right? The shirt says Legend, a Legend shirt. Everything about this guy has been a disaster. He still looks like he cuddles poodles all day. He looks like Mick Foley, you know, after he comes out of the Stefan Urkel machine. He's just gray. He's just Santa Claus from the neck up. Edge, color some of this shit, please. Why is everybody... I get it. This is one of the worst things that has occurred in pro wrestling since Vince McMahon left. Everybody on both shows, all these shows, is a bunch of gray beards. They just showing up. The Rock literally has a gray beard. Tommaso Ciampa comes out there and it's like, my God, he's like Rip Van Winkle. It's down to his chin and it's completely fucking silver. And now Edge is out there and he looks like, he just looks like a sleepy ass grandpa. Like, what's happening? Why are these guys stopped caring about themselves? Like, I know Vince would not have let Edge come out there, let Edgend come out there without his hair combed, with all that gray shit. He told that man, like, look, man, you gotta go cover that shit. Some of it, at least. Try to cover some of it up. At least try not to look like a homeless bum. I don't care how jacked you are, you look homeless. You look unhoused. Unsheltered. Alright? Stop this. You're a legend. We know you got money. You're about as bad as Mick Foley. We know you got money and you're choosing to walk around in flannels with holes in your pants. What are you doing? What are you doing? So let Legend, he comes out there. He calls Moxley out, says that he fought through a lot, talks about injuries. Says he got injured in these big matches, but he got back up, fought 10 minutes and continued. What can Moxley do to him? So Moxley's team comes out there and they get attacked by FTR. So there's a brawl between FTR and Legend and the Death Riders. And then Pac and Marina Shafir, they jumped in there and there's a brawl. And then Powerhouse Hobbs came out and he chased the Death Riders off just by being big, black, and muscular. And everybody was like, whoa, wait a second. I didn't ask for that. Let me go in the opposite direction. There's too much. It's too much meat coming in my direction right now. No diddy. So, look. Okay, whatever. I can't even muster up fake interest in Hobbs versus Moxley, bro. I'm trying hard because I'm such a fan of this guy. It's just not working. Come on. Damn it. That gauntlet match took up a lot of damn time. It took up a lot of time. So Jeff Jarrett was in the gauntlet. He lost. So then he came out there and he was moping. Jarrett, actually, he looks old. Colonel Jarrett, he looks very old. His hair is all mussed and, mustache is very bushy and looks a lot like Yosemite Sam. But, Jarrett is 60. He's still mostly blonde. And he just wrestled. So him being a little shaggy was okay. And he looked dead in the camera and he put on his most somber voice and he says that, he's thinking about whether he still got it. Do he still got what it takes? And I'm just thinking to myself, damn, bro, it's been a week. Like, it's been a week. You already about ready to pack it in. Like, god damn, you didn't even lose. Like, if he was the guy who got pinned, this promo might make more sense, But he didn't. He's not even the guy who got beat. So he's wondering if the old outlaw still got one more ride left in him. He gets interrupted by MJF, and I'm like, why? Why is MJF about to talk to Jeff Jarrett? Okay. So MJF, who's like the first person to appear on this show in a while that didn't have gray hair, Jesus Christ, or like incredible wrinkles. He comes out there. Ian Riccaboni is the guy holding the microphone for Jeff Jarrett, right? He calls Ian Riccaboni a Bible thumping prick and kicks him out of the ring. Okay. Then he starts talking about how clogged up the championship scene is and none of these guys deserve to be the champion except Jeff Jarrett. Says that Jarrett hasn't been completely honest because his new contract is only for 1 year. He said 1 year is all Tony Khan thinks that Jeff Jarrett's got left in him. But he's there to help. He says if Jeff Jarrett does end up winning the world championship, he wants to get the first shot at the title. He wants Jeff Jarrett to promise him to make a deal with him to get the world championship and then give MJF a shot at it. I don't understand this. Why does MJF want to help Jeff Jarrett? Look, I understand what he was saying. Like, oh, there's so many people like Hangman and Jay White and all these guys that want to be world champion. I'm going to help this sickly, weak old man get the belt, and then I'm going to take it from him. I understand the scheme. It's just, that's a pretty roundabout way of doing things. Because if you can scheme to help Jeff Jarrett, you can just scheme to help yourself, right? Or you could scheme with somebody who's significantly younger and has a better chance of getting the belt. Whatever. Anyway, Jarrett said that he's impressive. He called MJF impressive. Says that, but where he's from, MJF is a one-hit wonder. Then winked this and told MJF to make that a t-shirt. Then he says he'd been at rock bottom. Life took him back to rock bottom, but that only gives him a chance to climb back to the top. He said that he didn't say how old he was. I'm going to say it. He's 60 years old. And he got into that casino gauntlet while MJF didn't. MJF chose to scheme. And then he says that he does not need MJF. And he stormed off. And you know what? Ooh, this was a mixed bag for me. Because I am interested in the Jeff Jarrett story. It has a lot of parallels to the Ric Flair last year's story. Where Vince McMahon said, like, if you lose again, it's over. Like, I thought that was a fun story that they told at the time. They're not telling exactly that story with Jeff Jarrett, but they put a clock on Jeff Jarrett. So it's like the sword of Damascus is over his head. He's got 12 months to prove that he deserves to be the world champion. So that means every time you see Jeff Jarrett is going to be an important time. Similar to when Sting announced his retirement, right? It was told way in advance the date Sting's contract was going to expire and then that was going to be it. Now you're being told a year in advance that Jeff Jarrett only has one more year left. So that means every match is going to be more important. Every segment he does is going to be in service to that storyline. And eventually, you're going to get to the point where that clock is going to tick, 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 tick all the way down. Now, does Jeff Jarrett, should he be in this position? Honestly, no. But I'm okay with it because what they're doing is somewhat interesting. And it's one of the more interesting things that they're choosing to do. I don't understand how MJF is going to fit into this story. Why he wants to help Jeff Jarrett, I have no idea. Jarrett has spent his entire career being an unsanctified, absolutely demon. And now he's, cuddly, lovable old Double J. And it's actually quite interesting how many people have a soft spot for Jeff Jarrett. I'm not one of them. I can't say that I am. But of the people that I see on this show, I don't hate Jeff Jarrett. I don't hate Jeff Jarrett as much as I did when he was in TNA. So I have softened on Jeff. But I'm not at the point where Jeff Jarrett needs like a huge push at this point of life. I don't really need it. But it's almost like Tony Khan is dedicated to getting as much as possible out of his dinosaur class. His Jurassic wrestlers. He's going to get the most out of them. And I'm fine with this. I'm fine with this story. I just wish Jarrett was the only old man on the show. Having Edge on the show, having Christian on the show, and it's just too many old people. Right? It's just too many at one time. Too many of these guys are trying to get the Sting one last match, one more big title run. And all these guys are Attitude Era guys. Like, holy hell. These guys are in their 50s and 60s and shit, So it's tough. But I'm willing to give them the chance to let them tell the story. And you've created an inciting incident where MJF is offering his services to Jeff Jarrett, but Jarrett's not interested. Okay, let's see where it goes. We'll give him a chance to explain it. Let's see where it goes. All right, the women are going to have a casino gauntlet match too now, and it's going to be next week. So they had a play-in match for this show. Mariah May cut a promo before this show telling the girls to dance for her so that she can cut the strings later. And then she's interrupted by Harley Cameron, who is being silly. She rolls in a chair. Then she challenges Mariah May to a match for the title. Mariah May refuses because she doesn't deserve a title match. Harley says, no, the title doesn't have to be on the line. It's just an appetizer. And then Mariah May accepts it and then says she's going to cut her head off or something very cartoonish. And then we get the bit where Harley Cameron starts saying things under her breath. And then Mariah May's like, what are you saying? And she's like, you're going to feel the... And then eventually she says, you're going to feel the wrath. And she pushes herself away. And I was like, Harley Cameron has a lot of personality. She really does. Beautiful woman, a lot of personality. I'm not sure. I think she's wasted on this show. She should definitely be AEW's Chelsea Green. She should be more serious to a degree. She's a little... Maybe that's what she is. Because, Chelsea Green is not that much of a focused and pushed character in WWE. So maybe it's about the right place. She comes in, she does silly stuff, she loses all the time. She gets humiliated, she gets embarrassed. But I like Charlie Cameron. I keep calling her Charlie. I like Harley Cameron. I wish she was doing something a little bit more focused, though. It's just the amount of... She's just doing random stuff. Doesn't seem to make sense. Like, focus what she's doing. Now, in terms of the women's gauntlet, they had a triple threat match. Toni Storm, Chris Statlander, Willow Nightingale. And Chris Statlander wins the match by pinning Toni Storm, which everybody was surprised by because we're waiting for this storyline with Toni Storm to make sense. And now it makes even less sense because now she's lost. And they cut a promo afterwards where Toni is down in the dumps and says, well, it can't be Toni time all the time. And then it made it sound like she's not even going to enter the casino gauntlet. She says that she's not ready yet. She says, as far as the casino gauntlet, I'm just not ready yet. I'm like, wait a second. Is she voluntarily not entering? because that would be stupid. But I don't know. I don't know what's happening here. But a lot of people are pissed off, especially the Tony Storm fans. They're very pissed off. I am a timeless Tony Storm supporter. I've been confused since they started doing the amnesia thing. I don't know what's happening. I'm not following along on Collision and Rampage and all of that. Whatever they need to do it on Dynamite so I can see it. I don't like that. Look, Statlander won. Statlander is great. I can't be mad at her. I like Willow too. The match, I take it or leave it. I don't care about this match. But as far as I'm concerned, they're mismanaging Tony Storm and they're not really sure what they got here. I get it. You want to give Mariah May her spot, but you need to put her in a personal feud or something. Even if you want to do the revert back to her old gimmick. Right now, she's being booked like Jamie Hayter, where there's, again, just no direction. She's out there, she's doing stuff, but there's no end goal of what she's supposed to be doing. All right, so we get the big finale. Kenny Omega is going to do an entrance. And he's got some kind of Final Fantasy theme, which is exactly what he wanted and the kind of theme he uses in Japan. It's supposed to make him seem epic and badass. It just makes him seem like a weeb. Like only a Comic-Con motherfucker would show up in a video game original soundtrack theme song that has fuck all to do with your character. Like you do jumps over the top rope. Why do you need like a walking Armageddon theme? Like what? Come on, get real. Anyway, he comes out there and he cuts a promo that's actually pretty legit. I can't say it's any different from what you may have heard any other injured wrestler say. I could have died. Doctor said I would never come back, but now I'm back. Kind of generic in that way. But then he says that he thought about giving up. But what purpose does he have if he gives up? Then he says that he's not wrestling. He's not living. If he's not performing, he's not living. Then he says that he can't do all the things that he used to be able to do. But he's no longer concerned by money or power or revenge. And he's going to basically give it his all. And then he's interrupted by Don Callis. Don Callis comes onto the ramp and says, look at Kenny Omega back from the dead. And then Omega jumps out of the ring and chases Don Callis, who can't run. It was great. And he punching him in the head. So then we are forced to watch Don Callis' boys beat up Kenny Omega for a while. And by his boys, I mean Brian Cage and Lance Archer. Two bums. Huge bums. So Kyle Fletcher eventually comes out there to help them. And then Will Ospreay comes to help Kenny Omega. Chase off Callis and his boys. And then there's a moment where Omega and Ospreay stare at each other and acknowledge one another's presence. You're supposed to act like this is Warrior and Hogan in the ring or something like that. But, you know, everybody knows that it's not that. It's not even that for the people who love these guys. You know, I just, whatever. Anyway, they decided to tell us, they should have kept this a secret, that Kenny Omega is going to wrestle next week. I was like, okay, that's interesting. He's wrestling Brian Cage. And here, oh my Lord, oh my Lord, have mercy. Okay, let's talk about this. When you have older wrestlers, and when you have guys who are coming back from serious injuries, you got to realize at some point that any match could be their last. You know, I know Omega feels fine. I know he feels great. He could probably work these matches and be okay. But you never know when a guy's match is going to be his last match. Why waste a guy's bumps? Why waste Kenny Omega's bumps here? Why waste his time wrestling Brian Cage? Why? It's nonsensical. And it's the same thing with, you know, a lot of people pitching really stupid ideas for John Cena's retirement. Oh, John Cena should wrestle Karrion Kross. Like, for what? Karrion Kross is not like some pushed wrestler. Why should John Cena spend 10 minutes on Carmelo Hayes? Look, I don't hate those guys. I do hate Brian Cage, but I don't hate those other guys. But it doesn't make sense for you to run the risk of John Cena getting injured and blowing his last year so that you can give Carmelo Hayes or whatever the rub. And it's the same situation right here. Why run the risk of Omega injuring his legs, his back, or whatever, just so he can wrestle Brian Cage? Fuck. Brian Cage, a guy who has taken every testosterone and somehow still comes across effeminate. This guy sucks. He sucks. I don't know what he took to grow that bush on his face. He still sucks. And he sucked for over 5 years. I remember watching TNA, saying to myself as I sat slumped eating Fritos, like, my God, this guy is everything that should be great about pro wrestling. He's gigantic. He's athletic. But he cannot work for shit. And he can't work his own style for shit. He's just a big, muscular, wannabe Will Ospreay motherfucker. Brian Cage fucking sucks. And he's a waste of everybody's time and energy. And he has been for years. I'm not a big Kenny Omega guy, and I still don't think it's a good idea for him to be wrestling Kenny Omega. It's not worthy. It's not worthy. I guess you're going to work your way up to Omega versus Fletcher. What that means, he's got to waste his time on Lance Archer as well. Guess what? Lance Archer sucks. Lance Archer is a grown adult male with a tramp stamp who walks around with braids in his hair. He is Damian Priest all over again. What is wrong with these people? Why would you book this? Now, I'm not so sure who I would book Kenny Omega's return match against. I'm not even sure. I probably would make people wait for the pay-per-view, to be quite honest. But I certainly would not have come up with the name Brian Cage. I certainly wouldn't have came back with that one. You worked hard on that one, brother. Even half in the bag, I wanted to come up with that. All right, so that's it. That's Dynamite. It's tough to say I even liked anything. I just like that Hobbs won and Hobbs is getting a chance. Hey, 2025 is the year of Hobbs getting a chance. It took 5 years, man. I'm a bask in it. I'm not gonna beat Moxley, but I'm a bask in it. The Jarrett MJF stuff, I'm willing to give it a chance. Give it a chance to breathe. I'm already off the boat on Ricochet. Don't give a fuck. Everything else on this show is kind of like, who cares? And I'm a big Hurt Business guy, you know. But I don't see them having too much trouble out of getting those tag belts out of the Private Party. So there's no point in getting excited about that, because I don't see Private Party as a worthy challenge. Now, if they decide to book Private Party strong and get me to believe that they could retain against the Hurt Business, then maybe I'll be more involved with that. But for right now, I just see this. There's no reason why this shouldn't be a squash match. It should just be Lashley grabs both of them, puts them both in the Hurt Lock, and then throws them both in the garbage. Put a sticker that says "Back to Ring of Honor" on those guys, and then ships them the fuck on off. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.
Skin tone, so why attach yourself and piggyback the wealth you didn't earn or lack yourself? I'm telling you to own up to your own success and failures. It's a reason why these sleazy guys